Why do I do this to myself? Guys, this time, it's not water. Strap yourselves in. We're in for a ride. Jeez, where do I even begin with this? Alright, so I was going to be cheeky and act like I was ripping off both Belated Media and FamtanFalling with this reconstruction effort, but Christ, that got shot in the foot when I realized I'd have to divide the whole series up far more than I thought I did. You see, initially I thought I was going to just jump right into Volume 1 and how I would have gone about giving it the old tune-up. But the more I dug into how the series was flawed, the more I realized how deep the problem really lies. I had to start reworking the lore from scratch, and that started cannibalizing my time to the point that I realized I might as well make it its own fucking video. So instead of starting the story where it starts proper, I'm starting with damage control to the very elements that create the story itself. So here's the very first video on what I hope to be a helpful reconstruction of the entire series of RWBY, starting with the lore itself. Let's start with some of the small stuff right now, because there are some topics that need serious dissection, and these smaller points will probably get buried as I go along, so I might as well get them out of the way. Let's start with the cross-continental transmit system. At current, it makes absolutely no sense that the entire system would go down if one tower went down, and in fact, it hasn't really played into anything that this is an element of the story. So let's just shuck that entirely. If one tower goes down, it and the surrounding area are disconnected from the network, but the network itself still stays connected. So, as Veil went down in Volume 3, Atlas, Vacuo, and Mistral are still in touch with one another because, I mean, they kind of are. There's been communication between them, clearly, even with Veil, whose things have been down. And when the tower does go down in that one location, again, we'll use Veil as an example, scrolls in that area can still function as short-range radios and phones that can get a decent distance, but not enough to reach one of the other major towers. So you can still have people in the same area, generally connected, but not on the broader scale with the rest of the world. Next up is Dust, which is generally unchanged, though it should be clarified that Dust is simply a non-magic power source that produces a number of different effects that are elemental in nature, and that it effectively replaces the oil in this setting. It should also be mentioned it can be manipulated with aura, and it can be infused with the body, but at significant risk to the owner. But other than that, nothing really major changing there to what it is. Alright, now we're reaching the big stuff, because we're on Grimm, and the Grimm themselves don't make any sense from point A to point B. So let's give them some more meat to them. In my rework, they are in fact monsters that are attracted to negative emotions, but only in closer proximities to the prey. Essentially, it's a more efficient prey location device. This range expands with age, but the older a Grimm gets, the wiser it is to human behavior and tends to avoid humanity until it either needs to or wants to strike. It could be used also as an explanation for Salem's existence, a Grimm that has lived so long that it became a key organizer with grand ambition to wipe out humans instead of just killing at random. Grimm now don't just disappear in a puff of smoke, they actually do leave trophies behind, in the form of bones. And the bones are used to determine the difficulty of the kill for hunters who need to cash in on the reward, for scientific purposes and studying Grimm and Grimm anatomy, and as decoration, as you can see throughout the series of mounted heads and such. The idea of characters just making copies of heads just is head-scratching. They have bones, why not just have the bones leave behind? It doesn't make any sense to have them evaporate with the rest of the Grimm. and it's actually kind of a cool idea. Another big change is the absolutely ass-backwards statement that they don't hunt anyone other than humans, and then they do have skirmishes with wildlife. Yeah, we're just outright nixing that entire thing, and we're just saying they don't actively seek out other prey than humans, but skirmishes with other fauna are not unusual. Another big difference is we're establishing that as they grow older, a Grimm may evolve into new shapes and forms in order to suit certain needs. This seems to take the form of a few general configurations that can be easily labeled, such as Beowulfs and Ursai, but some Grimm become very specified and unique thanks to their storied history of violence and environment, just like that weird horse thing whose name I can't pronounce. The final point I would like to establish about the Grimms are about the nature of their origins and how no one in the setting, I mean no one, know where they come from. Except maybe Ozpin and Salem, but there'll be like the mysterious, like, people that know everything type thing. But regardless, everyone else, no one knows where the Grimm come from. And as a consequence, a number of different beliefs and approaches have developed around that. For example, there are religious beliefs that believe that some kind of malevolent god, the younger brother, created them to destroy humanity and to fight with an older god. From a scientific perspective, though, they are not seen as digesting any kind of food, and theory has gone out that the Grimm somehow subsist on the chaos they bring, or on the negative emotions they are so attracted to, though research in that field has been difficult to determine because how do you measure the calorie intake of negative emotions? It's that sort of question you ask. And speaking of scientific approach, let's move on to aura, because holy crap did I have a field day with aura. Now, of course, one of the biggest problems with this show is that we are never explicitly told how aura works, and our own observations of how aura works seem inconsistent with how it probably should work with other moments where it works in different ways. So, I've decided to sit down and actually create rules for aura that make fucking sense and can still apply to most situations in the series. First and foremost, it is an energy produced by the body, but scientifically no one knows where it comes from. So while science is still studying it, there is philosophical belief connecting the idea of aura to the very soul. Now, how aura is unlocked still happens very much like it does in the actual show, with someone who has aura having to unlock the aura of a weaker individual. But I'm also adding on the caveat that sometimes, through traumatic circumstance, the aura is also unlocked in order to protect that person in their time of dire need. Now, aura functions in a very important way as a defensive buffer between damage and the user. It is effectively a thin force field of energy that dampens impact from all forms of damage and heals the user, though to the extent of which the user is healed or protected by the aura varies upon the individual. It depletes with active use and being abused, with the user that runs out of aura entering a weakened state that leaves them vulnerable to attack. Users can willingly turn it on and off, and most people only really activate it when in a high-risk environment. Now, scientifically, aura is measured using two metrics: durability under stress and duration without stress, the former being listed with a letter grade and the latter being measured with a time, leading to a designation like A20. In the past, there were lengthy tests that were used to measure a person's aura, typically putting the user under stress, but in the modern age, technology can quickly and painlessly measure the rate of someone's aura. So, for example, the lowest aura on record would probably be like an A0, which is below 100 minutes of sustained time, and with the weakest durability rating. The highest recorded one would be something like T43, which has the highest durability rating and lasts for 4,300 minutes. An average score would be something like J14, which would basically have a nice average amount of resistance and last for about 1,400 minutes unabused. Now, the overall amount of aura that's left in a fighter is determined by how many minutes of their aura can be sustained without it having to shut off to recover, and without further abuse. In addition, minutes can be burned by a user in order to perform high-intensity acrobatics or other such impressive physical feats, such as hitting harder. The intensity of this effect is usually in direct correlation with the durability of the user's aura. Typically, this type of information is generally just background information for writers to keep in mind, but it's used to determine things like non-training team composition and tournament matchings. there would be two primary types of tournament rankings. Weight class, where people with the same durability score of aura are actually paired up together and tasked with depleting a fixed number of minutes of aura from their opponent. This is typically used in sports such as boxing or MMA, which focus more on form and power. Then there's the freeform type, where matches are mostly unregulated and opponents are tasked to reduce a percentile of their opponent's aura. This is used mostly by hunters and combat professionals to better reflect the extreme advantages and disadvantages of individuals in an actual life or death situation. You don't get a free pass just because you have more or less aura. It's basically what you can do with what aura you have. With aura all fixed up, we move on to Semblance, which is unlocked alongside the user's aura and has a tendency to reflect the user's personality, which again leads credence to the philosophical belief that aura and semblances are connected to the user's soul. Now, the semblance has a primary effect that is usually incredibly useful to the user and sometimes like a superpower, such as RWBY's speed, Yang's ability to get hit a whole bunch and then hit back harder, and Blake's shadow clone ability. But then there's also a secondary trait that's usually ineffective or simply aesthetic. Things like Yang's fire, RWBY's rose petals, Blake's kind of shadowy effect, and the kind of color of Weiss's glyphs. A semblance is considered a combination of this effect and this trait. While traits and effects can be repeated among different individuals, typically semblances as a whole are unique in that they are a different trait and a different effect for each individual person. So theoretically, you could have someone with Yang's fire, but RWBY's speed, and they are considered a unique semblance instead of Yang's Super Saiyan fire and RWBY's rose petal speed. Now, when a semblance is unlocked, the user feels via their aura how they're supposed to use their semblance, though it very often takes a while before the user can grasp how to best utilize it, be it thanks to a lack of understanding of what these new feelings are, or simply due to the complex nature of the semblance itself. The final topic I'm going to land on is hunters, and what their place in the world actually is. They are trained in order to fight Grimm, be it out in the wilderness or as town and city guards. Hunters who act in the wilds also behave as emergency guards and relief workers during Grimm horde attacks on outlier villages. They can be hired on as police attachés or by private individuals for mercenary needs. They need not be tethered to the state, though most do often align themselves with one of the kingdoms. And being as up until Volume 4, this entire show was about kids going to school in order to become hunters, I gave special thought to what kind of curriculum hunters would have being trained in their combat schools. So here's a number of classes that RWBY and the gang would be taking while at Beacon. Hunter Regulation and Law, Sparring and Team Building, Grimm Studies, World History, Survival, Advanced Weapon Building, Mercenary Economics, Weightlifting, Psychology, Sociology, Infrastructure, Repair and Construction. These classes are important to building up the core tenets of the hunters, whose jobs are to go out, protect lives, and help rebuild in the face of a monstrous threat. And hopefully all these elements will come together in order to make a more believable and realistic world. Now, that's how I would have fixed a lot of the background lore in this show and keep it consistent, believable, and interesting. But I also recognize that I myself am not infallible as much as I wish I were. So if you have any suggestions, ideas, or concepts, please leave them in the comments below. If you have critiques upon my personal changes, please leave them below. I would love to hear your thoughts on this, and I'll be fair to defend my stances, but if you have a good idea, I may very well tweak my entire rewrite in order to accommodate such a good idea. And before someone mentions it, yes, there's no mention of the maidens, of the silver-eyed warriors, or the gods. This is a purposeful choice. I decided to leave them out because I felt they were more relevant in the actual sections of the volumes they were present for. So volumes 1, 2, and 3 will cover those different topics individually. Enough to pad out the runtime a little bit on those videos, but at the same time, I feel those are topics more localized to those particular videos themselves. So please, keep an eye open for it when I finally get around to doing Volume 1. I don't know when, but I'll get to it. Until then, please, remember to like the video, comment down below, and subscribe. It's been a wonderful time having you all as my audience, and I'll catch you all on the flip side. Hey there! If you liked the video, please hit that like button down below, or even leave a message in the comments. If you're interested in more content like this, check out the rest of the channel, as well as our Facebook page and my Twitter handle. If you'd like updates on our newest content, hit that subscribe button so our news of our most recent work reaches you as fast as possible. And if you're feeling especially generous today, please check out our Patreon page. It's thanks to you, our faithful fans and followers, that we can make the content that we love. Please keep up that support, and as always, we'll catch you on the flip side.